a lot of hard tech companies that we talk to, if you look at their financials, it tends to be kind of linear growth. They put in a dollar on manufacturing and sales and marketing, and they get out, X number of dollars, and it's pretty linear. I think when you've established that true product market fit, it starts to be a bit more exponential. Where one year you put in $1 and you got X out. The next year you put in $1 and you got three times that. And so I think that's the kind of trend that we like to see sort of that proof point that you're sort of on to something.
Hey everyone, this is Prashant and I'll be host for the VC 10X podcast. And today we have Andrew Haughian with us. Andrew is a general partner at Pangaea Ventures. He joined Pangaea Ventures in 2006. His core expertise lies in helping companies navigate the early growth stage of the development as they work to build out high performance teams, cultivate a culture of excellence, and nail product market fit. In this episode, we talk about how has the Hardtech ecosystem evolved over the past 2 decades, their investment plan for the new $85 million Fund 5, how should Hardtech founders approach product market fit, some exciting Hardtech companies they have backed, why they invest at the commercialization stage, common mistakes Hardtech founders make, and lots more. So, without wasting any time, let's dive straight in. This episode is sponsored by my own podcasting agency called Podcast 10X, where I help VCs start and run their own podcast. While I was running VC 10X, this podcast that you're listening to right now, I asked my VC guests, why don't you start your own podcast? I mean, it's the best form of marketing for VCs. As they say, VC is a people play more than even a capital play. A podcast enables you to put your people at the front, your portfolio founders, your partners, and co investors. It's a great way to build a brand and win competitive deals. It activates all your marketing channels in a single shot, be it YouTube or blog post or newsletter or social media. Everything gets activated in a single shot. And I get the same response from all the VCs that it's a lot of work and we don't have the time for it. I said, all right, let me handle the work for you, from pre recording, editing, publishing to making social media clips. All you have to do is show up on a call, hit record, do the recording using the well researched outline we provide you with, and you're done. We handle everything else. You know what they said? All right, let's give it a shot. So if you are a VC and want to up your marketing and branding game, I'd love to work with you. And if you're thinking there are too many VC podcasts already, remember there are way more VC firms out there. And if you're not standing out, you're losing out. So if you want to work with me on starting your podcast, go to podcast10x.com and book a call today. I'll add the link in the description and show notes below. Look forward to working with you. Hey, Andrew, so good to have you on the VC 10X podcast. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful today. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, my pleasure. And likewise, to start things off, can we first have your story and how you got into investing?
So, working in venture capital has been the majority of my career. To be honest, I've been working at Pangaea Ventures now for 18 years. I was actually the third member of the team to join in 2006. I have an engineering background prior to that, and worked in a number of industries, in oil and gas and mining and forestry. So some of the very traditional industries. And so it was really exciting to move into an area where you're really looking at the latest cutting edge technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite interesting. And so you've been, I think, about 18 years at Pangaea Ventures now, which is a big time frame. And I think Pangaea Ventures was founded in the year 2000, and that's the same year I was born, right? So it's crazy. So tell me about how have you evolved over the past 18 years, and how have you seen the firm evolve over these past about two decades, more than 2 decades, in how they do investing?
Sure. So some things have stayed the same. For most of our history, we really have focused on what we call hard tech. So these are companies that are leveraging technology around material science, chemistry, and biology, and that largely is the same. I'd say where we've seen the biggest difference is the stage of investment. And I would say the first sort of half of Pangaea's life, say the first decade or so, we were investing in very, very early stage companies. Often these were spin outs from universities. Often they were a technology looking for a problem. I remember in my early years, it seemed like almost half the companies. Uh, the name started with nano, and so there was a lot of that, a lot of platform technologies, but they hadn't really sort of figured out what the real pain point was and what the market was, and so I think over the last decade, entrepreneurs have become a little bit more sophisticated in terms of how they think of solving, real problems, faced by the world, thinking about sort of product market fit, and we've done that as well. This is a major theme for us, making sure that we are investing in companies that are solving an urgent problem, and we spend a lot of time, following those companies, and really picking the inflection point when venture capital is appropriate, where things start to move fast, and that's typically when there's a commercial product of some sort, and the activities are not centered around R&D and testing and qualifying and those sorts of things. What we've sort of learned is it's almost impossible to predict how long it will take to get through those phases, and so we like to kind of hit the inflection points, and that's sort of what we've been doing the last decade or so.
Right, absolutely. Quite interesting. And talking about hard tech, how has that evolved in the past 2 decades? What were the kind of problems you were seeing startups tackle in the early 2000s versus what are the kind of solutions that you're seeing now?
Yeah, as I said, I think a lot of the companies in the early years for us were technologies looking for a problem, and um, often these were, university spinouts, and they maybe had a really cool science and technology that could possibly do 5 or 10 different things. And often, the first 5 to 10 years of the company was figuring out what sort of would stick, throwing spitballs and figuring out what would stick. And and some of those companies survive, but there was a lot of failures. You need to really be thinking about the timelines that you have, to figure that out. And uh, one of the criticisms some people have is Hardtech is it, it takes a long time, and it's often not the technology development itself that takes a long time. It's figuring out product market fit.
Absolutely. So you think that founders just building something and then finding if there is a problem that fits the solution that I built. Do you think that has changed now? That now founders have that mindset that okay, I'm going to find a solution to a problem that already exists, right? Because one thing that might be particular about hard tech founders is that they are technical folks, right? They're deep into technology and sometimes can be too infatuated by it, right? So they
Mhm.
just want to build things and not very sure if that solves a problem or not, because what their interest is to experiment and build something out of nothing, right? And then maybe then they figure out if there is a problem out there. So has that changed? Has the mindset of founders changed that okay, now they're looking for a big problem to tackle and then building a solution for that?
So listen, there are still many founders that are doing exactly what you just said, but I would say there's more that are coming at it from okay, here's the problem, here's the market, with a big pain point, and we have something that can help address that. And so, you know many of the founders that we work with in these hard tech companies have a technical background, for sure. I think that's quite important, but not all. And often, the best companies are complementing that rich technology heritage with people that are more on the business side and maybe have worked, at larger companies and understand, how to do that. And so, uh, yeah, that's what we're seeing, more sophistication on the business, side of bringing these things to fruition.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you try to invest at that inflection point where it's ready for commercialization, right? So, how long have you seen a hard tech company typically take where it matures to a stage that it is ready to be commercialized, and then you are more interested in that opportunity?
It varies a lot. We sometimes see companies, it can be 6 months, a year, but sometimes it can be 15 years. We invested in a company in our second fund in 2007 that you know never became commercial, even after over 12 years. And in fact, one of our best investments that we've made so far, it actually returned all of one of our funds. It was a company called Redland Technologies, and this was a company that we first looked at in the early years of Pangaea, and then we made an investment, I think around 2014. So we sort of monitored things for about 12 years, and that was right at the inflection point when things were taking off. And so that's the period it took. We do tend to like companies that can get there faster because it sort of means maybe their approach is more elegant. If it really takes a decade to figure out the science, then I think there's a good likelihood the next phase is also going to take a while.
Right, completely agree. And my next question was kind of related to that. That if it is taking so long for some startups to mature from one stage to another, and venture capital as an asset class, it's a 10-year time frame within which you have to exit and make returns. So is it hard for a hard tech fund, or is it a battle for a hard tech fund? You have done like four funds, you're now on your fifth fund now. So is that a battle for you, that okay, at the end of the fund you have to see how do I exit this business, which might be doing well, but isn't at the stage where it can IPO or something, right? So has that been a battle to make it fit into the venture capital asset class?
What I would say is the companies that we've been investing in over the last decade, I'm less worried about that. They've gotten to a commercial proof point, and then the trick is getting them on a trajectory where things are starting to kind of happen exponentially, and they're growing quickly. It's not sort of linear growth, and then I think those are the companies that very quickly can be ready for exits. In my view, in a time frame not unlike a typical kind of software VC firm. But if you are investing in early stage, pre-commercial, where the primary focus is R&D, you probably want to have a 15 to 20-year fund to make that work. I would agree with that.
Right, absolutely. So you are investing at a somewhat a later stage where it has been de-risked to a point that it is now ready to commercialize,
Mhm.
and then after that, you believe that it will be ready to exit within that 10-year time frame. Okay, makes sense. Great. So commercialization is, you believe, the first hurdle in the hard tech sector. The second hurdle, what I would say, is PMF. Uh, you can confirm that, and if it's that, then you are kind of their partner in helping them achieve that stage, right? So what does PMF look like for hard tech startups, and what approach do you suggest to your portfolio companies, having seen so much of game film over the years of different companies being built? What's your advice on how should hard tech startups approach PMF?
Yeah, so I would agree with what you're saying. What we like to do is when we like to invest in companies where we have a really strong thesis with conviction around product market fit, but it has not been proven. And so, sort of, our job when we invest is to help those founders prove the thesis. And then the company is ready for true growth funding, to really sort of scale. And so, I think there's a few things that you need to do. One is you really need to often the companies that we're investing in, there's some element of a platform technology where there's multiple um, opportunities that they could go after. They need to figure out what is the beachhead, where is there the most urgent need out there, and where are the barriers that they face to bringing that to market the least. So that's sort of something that we will go through with them. The other thing is often, partners are required. Do they, what is the partnering strategy to help make that happen? And are they able to sort of, pick the best company, best partners to work with? And often customers fall into that as well. I think you do need to be quite strategic about the customers that you pick in your early years. Customers that understand, the challenges of bringing something like this, to market. So those are some of the considerations. I also like to say that, as a startup, you can really only do one thing well, and you need to sort of be able to pick what that is and really become, the best in the world at that. And so then, from sort of like a metrics perspective, a lot of hard tech companies that we talk to, if you look at their financials, it tends to be kind of linear growth. They put in a dollar on manufacturing and sales and marketing, and they get out, X number of dollars, and it's pretty linear. I think when you've established, that true product market fit, it starts to be a bit more exponential. Where, one year you put in $1 and you got X out. The next year you put in, $1 and you got three times that. And so I think that's the kind of trend that we like to see sort of that proof point that you're sort of on to something.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And now let's talk about the new fund. Firstly, many congratulations on the new 85 million fund that you have raised, which is fund number five. So tell us about the new fund, and is there going to be any change in strategy and how you deploy that fund, or is it going to be the same as you deployed all the other funds?
So what we like to say is that we're investing in hard tech for planetary health. And sort of we see the world or the planet as a single organism, and we have the environment, and we need to have a healthy environment, the air, water, soil, free of toxins. We need to make sure that, the climate is not changing too much, and then that will feed into, ensuring we have an adequate supply of clean water, and adequate supply of food to feed sort of a growing population. And then that in turn feeds to healthy humans, which is the ultimate goal. And often there's technologies that we can sort of help bring to market to improve that. So that's the underlying thesis. Largely, that's similar to what how we've thought about things over the last decade. So not a major change there. I would say the biggest thing we're really trying to sharpen the pencils on before we make investments is that urgency in the marketplace, and really building the conviction that there's product market fit. Because if I look at some of the companies that we invested in the past that haven't done as well, you know, they're almost always great technologies, but they just haven't had that sort of pull and urgency from the market, and we really want to sharpen our pencils there.
Absolutely. There's an amazing thesis there. And to see that in practice, can you tell us about some of your portfolio companies that are helping you fulfill some of those goals that you just mentioned?
Sure, yeah. So a company that we've recently invested in from our new fund, it's a company in Arizona called Biodel, and this company is working in the agriculture space, and they have a crop input that they sell to farmers, and farmers are buying it today because it greatly reduces the amount of water that's required. It reduces the amount of fertilizer that's required, say on the order of 30%. So major cost savings for them. It's also improving the yields that they're able to achieve, and so that is helpful for, helping to grow, food production, for the world. And then one of the most interesting things is that this technology, the core ingredient that they have in their formulation is a cyanobacteria. And what they found is as they've added this to the soil, it really starts to improve the health of the soil. And when you improve soil health, it sort of transitions from often being a carbon source where carbon is released into the atmosphere to being a carbon sink. And the the numbers that we're talking about here in some cases are really incredible. I won't give the numbers here because I think it differs, but you know, if I was to extrapolate for this technology being used, in farmland around the world, we're talking at a level that could almost sequester all of man-made carbon emissions each year. So really amazing numbers, and that's done at very little cost. And so I think that is something that I'm really excited about, and the company is growing really well. From a prior fund, a company that I think that I worked on closely for many years is in the energy storage space, a company called ESS. And this is a public company now. And their technology is an iron based battery for a grid scale energy storage. And so ideally pairs with renewable energy like wind and solar, and allows you to sort of have a levelized energy supply, even if you have intermittent renewables. And of course, there's lithium ion batteries that are the majority of the market today, but they have issues sometimes around safety and environmental issues, and they tend, as you've sort of seen with your cell phones, they tend to degrade over time. And so this iron-based battery, is completely safe. It does not degrade at all, which is amazing. And so it's really like a very long life asset that fits into the energy infrastructure. And I think this is perhaps the most important technology that the world requires for deep decarbonization of the electricity grid. So if we think of technologies like AI, the amount of computational power that is required to drive those technologies, it's really incredible. It's really growing. To produce the same um, computational power of the brain from sort of an AI engine today, I think it's something like five orders of magnitude more energy. And so, we have this world that's trying to reduce our use of energy and reduce carbon emissions, but then we also have this phenomenon known as AI that is opposing that. And building a nuclear power plant probably takes 15 years, and so in order to supply that, I think we're going to need a lot more renewables, and we will need storage. And so I think the product that ESS has is really the best. This was a company that we invested in almost a decade ago, and even now we don't see a better technology for the sort of that segment of the market. So that's a company that, even as a public company, we're still shareholders and huge believers in what they're doing.
Absolutely. That's very interesting. And let me ask you this on the last point that you made. When these companies go public, the IPO stage, at that time, the private investors have to make a decision whether we want to exit or whether we want to stay invested, right? So, how do you make that a decision?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We are not public market investors, and so I think you do need to recognize that venture firms will exit their positions over time. We have certain lifetimes on our fund, but I think ultimately um, it it rests on our sort of fundamental belief in the company, and the valuation that they have. And if we feel that the company is undervalued based on the information that we know, then we may be more inclined to sort of hold on. And the opposite would be true if we feel things are inflated. So yeah, it's a tough decision. but ultimately venture investors do need to exit their positions.
Yeah. So, in a case where you would like to hold on to that, but you don't have the kind of time frame that is required to hold on to that, what do you do in that situation? Do you have to sell it by force to return the money, or you can still hold on to it?
There's a number of mechanisms that can be used. You can extend the lifetime of your fund and you know discuss that with your LPs. You can actually distribute public shares to your LPs and then let them decide what to do. So there's a number of options, but in some cases, VC firms do need to sell maybe before they'd really like to because of this sort of time frame constraint, and that's just reality.
Right, right. Absolutely. Great. So now let's talk about founders. What type of founders do you like to back, and what are the typical backgrounds do good hard tech founders come from?
Sure. So as we talked about earlier, a lot of the folks that we work with do have a technical background, but not necessarily. We have founders and entrepreneurs that we work with from all sorts of backgrounds. I'd say one of our most successful companies, the founder, he's still very young, but he started his career as a fisherman in Alaska, and so I think it's not so important the education and the companies that you've worked for, but sort of the mindset. And there's a few things that we're really looking for. One is we like to see kind of grit, and we like to see scrappiness. We like to see that people are creative and know how to do more with less. That's really important. The other thing is, I don't believe that there's room for egos in hard tech startups. And so I can guarantee along the journey, a founder will be hit in the face multiple times with some very large, humble pies. And so if ego is sort of central to the characteristic of that person, in my observation, the response to that to that event tends to not be they tend not to not make the decision because they're worried about the perception and that sort of thing. And so we really like to sort of really get to know these people and make sure that that's not an issue, and make sure that they um, are are listeners. There's one saying I like to sort of say is argue like you're right, but listen as if you're wrong. And so you have a strong position and a thesis, but you're also always bringing in information to make sure that you're sort of adjusting based on the best information. So that's what we like to see. I would say that mentality tends to cause us to gravitate to often more diverse founders. Often it's more difficult for them to for example raise money, and so they have to be have to be scrappy. If you're a PhD from, say, one of the coastal universities, working in a hot area, you could have, and you want to start a company, you could have term sheets land in your inbox before you even graduate. And I don't think that's the best way for you to figure out in the early years how to get through the ups and downs of bringing one of these companies to market. And so we tend to like to invest in people that have had to kind of make some tough decisions and sort of make some sacrifices. And then once we're invested, then they tend to not need a whole lot of babysitting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very helpful advice there. On the ego point you mentioned, I think one great example is of SpaceX, where the first few rocket launches actually failed, and they were at the verge of losing it all when they tried the fourth rocket launch, and it succeeded. And we just recently had them catching a rocket from dropping from space with robotic arm, and that was uh, kind of a historic moment, and can be a leapfrog moment for humanity as well. But we'll see. But
Mhm.
yeah, you have to be resilient and have that grit to be able to keep trying despite those failures. And failures are much bigger in hard tech, I would believe, than in software, because one bug here and there you can fix that and then go again. But in hard tech, they can be expensive as well.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
SpaceX example is a great one because
Hmm.
that idea of what was done and what was demonstrated last week, it was sort of a contrarian idea, and it wasn't the sort of mainstream way of thinking, and I think most of the successful companies in hard tech, it's sort of contrarian thinking that sort of wins the day.
Absolutely. Talking about contrarian thinking, what's most contrarian bet that you've ever made?
Yeah, that's a good question. I I'd have to say our investment in ESS in 2015. This was at a time when everyone believed that lithium ion was going to be the mainstream technology, and most energy storage systems were providing, say, 1 hour duration. And there'd been sort of um, say the 5 years prior, there'd been a lot of new energy storage companies that had come and gone, and had not figured out their technology. And so there wasn't really anyone investing, in that space. And now, I would say long duration energy storage is probably the most important area sort of in the renewables space. And so that was sort of a contrarian bet at the time, but I think now it's pretty mainstream.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Uh, what are some common mistakes that hard tech founders make that can be avoided?
Yeah, so one of the things that we see is they just get out over their skis, and they're maybe they've developed a new technology or science that um, is really interesting. Maybe it's been written up in journal papers, and they've gone to conferences, and everyone thinks it's amazing, and it may be, but that's a long way from actually having a viable commercial company. And so they tend to take um, that sort of positive feedback and say, hey, well, it's time for me to raise a huge round of funding. And especially if they're able to tell that story, they take on that money, and they don't use it wisely. The burn rates go up really high, and it's not efficient, and they don't hit their milestones. And then if you do that for too long, it really can be the death kiss for these companies. And because the like we talked about, compared to software, the iteration cycles tend to be longer. With software, if something's not working quite right, you can tweak something here and there and test that, and adjust. And here, the pivot, the sort of cycle to do pivots is a lot longer. And so I think it's really important to figure out that product market fit on as little money as you can, and really wait till you've sort of proven that to start to take on the big money to really scale. I'd say that's the biggest thing that we see.
Got it. Got it. That's useful advice there. And moving on to the last main question before we do the rapid fire round. And this is, what's been your biggest learning investing in startups over the years?
It's really a people business. You would think, well, Pangaea Ventures, we're a hard tech firm. We spent a lot of time digging into the science and understanding that, and we have PhDs on our team, and that's, of course, it's almost table stakes. But at the end of the day, if I look back at our biggest successes, it's really about the people. And so we spend a tremendous amount of time getting to know them. Really, the preference is to to follow them over a period of time, and see how they make decisions, see how they deal with people issues. How are they able to hire the best and brightest to kind of surround themselves with those complementary skills that they need. So I think the people side is absolutely the most important thing, and that's something I think we've known this for a while, but we never want to lose sight on that. Another thing is that it's really important for a founder, entrepreneur, as well as an investor like us to sort of know the syndicate of other investors that we're working with. And there's been many examples of venture back companies um, having some serious challenges simply because of the investors that have been involved. And sort of shocking to me is just those investors not really um, sort of thinking about their fiduciary duty to the company when they're board members. And so I think we really like to get to know the syndicate partners that we're going to be working with. And I always strongly advise the companies that we've invested in to think about the same thing. And if I look at a couple of our really successful companies that are still portfolio companies right now, if I just think about the mindset of those entrepreneurs, they are very, very selective on who is on their cap table, and they're doing their own due diligence on everyone that they're going to be working with. I think that's something that maybe even a couple of years ago I didn't appreciate as much as I do now.
Right, absolutely. So it can go both ways. So basically, those companies are doing well. Is it because of that reason that they are able to make that choice, to do that things and be selective in that, versus a company that is probably struggling and wants cash kind of immediately? They cannot may make that choice, right? So that's the thing.
I mean, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. I mean, sometimes beggars can't be choosers, but you know, in some cases, it may be preferred to get by with a smaller amount of money than to bring on someone that is going to be detrimental um, to the sort of long term success of your organization.
Right, right. Completely agree. Awesome. Now let's do the rapid fire round, wherein I'll ask you six quick questions about the investing you're doing, and you have to give six quick answers, right? So the first one is, what are the sectors and regions you invest in?
So we invest in Hardtech and Hardtech for planetary health. Right now, we're primarily focused on investments in North America. We're finding more than enough opportunities here with our current fund. That may change in the future.
Got it. What's the typical stage of investment?
So what we like to say is early growth. And so these are companies that have a commercialized product or process, but they don't necessarily have meaningful trailing revenue. But they're sort of at that inflection point where they're starting to sort of have a lot of commercial activities. Typically, in the areas we're investing in, Series A or B, we tend to stay away from the really capital intensive companies.
Got it. Do you lead rounds?
We do, but we're also happy to follow others.
Got it. What's the typical check size you put in?
From the current fund, the initial check size is typically, $3 to $4 million, and we will reserve money to fall on invest in sort of our best performing companies.
Great. Where can founders get in touch in case there is a direct way?
Sure, yeah. Happy to have cold emails. My email is simply andrew@pangaeaventures.com.
Awesome. Last one. Where can our listeners follow you?
I'd encourage everyone to have a look at our website. We have lots of information there. Check out Pangaea on LinkedIn, and I think you'll learn a lot from that.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes below. This has been a very insightful conversation, Andrew. Thanks so much for making time, and I wish you happy investing.
Great, I enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure.